Outside the Box Reviews, it's time to bark at the moon because today we are looking at the Universal Select Wave 6 Wolfman figure. And this wave of Universal Select seems to be following in the footsteps of the previous wave, where they're giving us some new updated versions of previously released characters. I think around the third wave of Universal Select, they started adding more articulation to their figures, really upping the game with them. And it made some of their early releases look really crappy. And while last time they gave us a redone Creature from the Black Lagoon and a Son of Frankenstein figure, this wave brings us new versions of the Wolfman and the Mummy. However, my general complaint with these character choices is this isn't quite what I expected after last time. Giving us the Son of Frankenstein version of the Frankenstein monster, and a version of the Creature from the Black Lagoon with some different color variations. I thought perhaps they were really going to be giving us some new variant, some different versions or sequel versions of these monsters, since we already had the original movie's version on our shelves. Instead, they've given us a Wolfman that is, at least in paint deco, nearly identical to his counterpart so many waves ago. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a closer look at the Wolfman and see how he stacks up to that Wave 1 version. I did forget to mention at the top of this review that I did get the Deluxe version, the comic shop version. I honestly have not seen a Toys R Us version of these in existence this year, so that might not even be a thing this time around, but we do get a big old display base with the Wolfman here. See this kind of cracked stone on the bottom, there's kind of moss and dirt, leaves, and these kind of crumbling pillars, which look pretty darn nice. Some good painted detail in there, showing off all the roots and grass and everything going all over them. We even get some bones back here on the side. My biggest complaint, however, is there is only one peg, and the way the Wolfman's feet are shaped, it kind of needs two pegs to really secure him. I actually had the exact same problem with the Sideshow version of the Wolfman. It's just really hard to get him to stand basically on his tiptoes as he's kind of meant to be. Flip it around to the back, you really see there's nothing going on here. It's really hollow and empty, but hey, for a figure this price, for getting a base this big, I'm not really complaining at all. Except for the peg. That would have been easy to add. Now, despite the fact that they did give us the exact same Wolfman design over again, they definitely upped their game here with the sculpting. I think the face sculpt on the Wolfman here is really, really good. Very much captures that Lon Chaney likeness, and the original head sculpt for the previous version was really lackluster, but we do have some nicely done brown eyes in there. We have the fur pulling away from his face and that kind of classic Wolfman puffiness going on. The ears sculpted in there. The nose with the brown part on it because you really couldn't hide that back in the day. His underbite. Some good shading in that fur as well, which I really appreciate. Overall, I think the head sculpt is done really nicely. I like how it came out here. We pull back the head a little bit, you can see the neck. It does have sculpted hair, at least in the lower section. It kind of becomes bald up here at the top, which makes sense due to articulation, but there is some sculpted hair that looks decent on there as well. When we get to the shirt's done really nicely. It's a nice dark forest green with the buttons detailed in black, the pockets sculpted in there, the wrinkles everywhere in it. Overall, it looks pretty good. I think this mid-torso joint makes it look a little wonky because it really looks bad if you don't line up the buttons on the shirt. But overall, I think they did a good job. It's tucked in here. You can see it kind of billowing out around his belt. However, you flip it around to the back, and there's just tons of copyright info right there at the top of his back. I guess you're never supposed to look at the backside of this figure. It's funny because I always joke that you gotta take a figure out of the package because somebody spent time painting the back of that figure and you better appreciate it. Well, here somebody spent time putting copyright info on the back of the figure. The whole shirt, however, does have a really nice lighter green also shading it, helping to bring out all the details, which is really cool. Some good sculpting here on the sleeve, and then we have his Wolfman hands, which I really like. Furry on the back, continuing that brown from his face, but then it kind of becomes this darker brown with the big yellow nails. Some good craggly details there on the inside of his hand as well. Both hands are open in gripping poses or strangling poses, which I think is iconic for the Wolfman. I think it's exactly what you'd want his hands to be. He's got a belt sculpted in there. We got all the belt loops. We have the buckle there. Looks pretty darn good. We have tops to pockets on the back, but not actual pockets sculpted in there. Pants are black with this kind of blue dry brushing over top of it, which can look a little sloppy, especially in smoother areas like his ass here. Can't believe I'm sitting here talking about the Wolfman's ass. Most people just talk about how the Wolfman's got nards. But it does look a little funky here. We do get some stitching sculpted in here on the front of the pants, some wrinkles around the knees. Then we get his werewolf feet here, so we have some fur coming out of the bottom of his pants. Then this permanently back bent foot. You see kind of the bones sculpted in there and the sharp little yellow werewolf toes coming out. He does have peg holes on both feet, despite only having one peg on his base. For articulation, I think the Wolfman comes up a little lackluster. He does have a ball joint at his neck, but because of the way his hair is sculpted and his collar is sculpted, you can't really get his head to go back at all. If they give him a hinge joint in there, I feel like you really could have gotten his head to go back quite a bit, and I feel like you need it to have him howling at the moon. He doesn't look like he's howling at the moon if he's just barely looking up. Could also not really look too far down without trying to pull the head off the peg. Can't even really go side to side too well because of the collar. You have to get his chin up and over that collar, and then you're basically stuck having him look up while he's looking to the side. So can't look up when he's looking forward. You can only look up when he's looking to the side. Shoulders, pin socket joints, so they'll go all the way around. They will also go out to the side. You can rotate at the bicep. The hinge joint here at the elbow, which only bends about 45 degrees. Another little bit of disappointment there. That also rotates. I don't understand why Diamond feels the need to include a rotation at the elbow and a bicep cut. Just give us one or the other and put articulation somewhere else on this figure where it needs it, like a neck hinge. That would be cool. Hands will rotate as well as hinge in and out. A little hindered because of his sleeves, but they work pretty well. As I mentioned earlier, he does have a ball joint mid-torso, so you can move it forward, back, side to side, as well as tilt. But once you move it at all, it really breaks up the sculpt. We also do have a ball joint here at the waist, so you can go a little forward and back, side to side, a little bit of tilt. But because of the way the shirt is sculpted here, it doesn't really move as freely as it feels like it really needs to. So I guess we are stuck with needing this mid-torso joint because the waist joint's lackluster. The legs use that kind of DC-UC style where they'll go forward, a little bit back, but hindered by the ass. And then they'll go out to the side, leaving this big gaping hole there in the middle, which I think with the Wolfman looks particularly bad because you always want him in crouching poses. You have a swivel here at the upper leg. Bend at the knee, that's pretty good, about 90 degrees. We can rotate his foot where it comes out of his pants. We also have a really nice hinge there. I guess that would technically be at the heel of his foot. And you can kind of use that also as a rotation point to give him kind of pseudo ankle pivot. I feel like the biggest disappointment with this figure came when I stuck him next to the original version. Of course, you get two figures of the same character. You want to compare them. And while I've already said the sculpt in general on this new Wolfman is much, much better than the original version there on the left, the paint's even better. The head on the new one is way better. But in trying to get him even kind of into the same pose as the original version, you see some limitations of having that articulation. You see that the legs look wonky because they're always going to look skinny up at the hip with the way they're shaped when you try to get him into a deeper stance. You also realize that you have no choice but to put this guy on a display base because he's never going to stand on his own 2 feet, and adding that extra articulation really makes that true. And then there's the slight, pretty nerdy gripe that if you're going to give me another Wolfman figure, give me something different. In the Minimate format, they gave us a Wolfman in the tank top, similar to how you see the transformation scene of the werewolf. I think that would have been a cool way to do this. Yeah, you would have to spend a lot more time sculpting hair and everything, but it would have been a unique version of the figure so that the people who already have the old version on their shelves will have something new, and the people who never picked one up will still have a representation of the Wolfman that is movie accurate. Maybe that's just me being really nitpicky, but I think it would have been really cool. I do kind of have to say that I'm glad you can get this Wolfman into a strangling pose because that's his main way of attacking people in the film, and it's kind of cool that we could do that now. But overall, I feel like the negatives outweigh the positives on this figure, and that sucks. As a kid, the Wolfman was my favorite Universal monster. I thought werewolves were the coolest freaking things ever, and I thought Universal horror movies were the pinnacle of horror. And getting the figure like this just really disappoints me. There's a lot of things going on here that are right, but I feel they're overshadowed by the things that are wrong. He has a lot of articulation, but some of it's excessive, and then some still missing. He has glaring copyright crap all over his back. So, unfortunately, I'm going to give the Wolfman a slight not recommend. If you never picked up the first one, then maybe I'd elevate it to a slight recommend, just if you wanted a Wolfman and never got one. And this probably is the best 7-inch version of Lon Chaney as the Wolfman that's ever come out. But unfortunately, that's not saying a ton right now. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers by night may be forced to make toy reviews when the wolfsbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.